Hi, this is Sean D'Souza, and you're listening to the 3-Month Vacation Podcast. This podcast isn't some magic trick about how to work less. Instead, it's about how to really enjoy the work that you do and to enjoy your vacation time. Hi, it's Sean, and you're listening to the 3-Month Vacation. Imagine you're 10 years old again and you're at school. Picture the classroom and think how rigidly your desks at school were placed. Now think of all the schools in almost every country and you get the idea of conformity and rigidity. And yet if you look at a video on YouTube, there's this language teacher, Michelle Thomas, and you'll notice something very odd about his behavior. Thomas has been given what could be considered to be the most challenging students in the class. And his mission is to get them started learning French. However, Thomas does something entirely unexpected. The students are clearly in the classroom, but the first task has nothing to do with learning the language. Instead, they start by getting on sofas and moving screens, and they start creating this atmosphere that seems more like your lounge than a room you'd find in a school. And Thomas says, learning should never be work. Instead, it should be a pleasure. How about we upgrade that a bit? How about we take it from a pleasure to a bit of fun instead? And that's what this podcast is about. It's only one part, but we're going to talk about fun. How do you have fun both when you are learning, but also when you are teaching? So let's start out with, how do we get to this point of fun? Fun seems to be the most obvious word in the world. Why do we have to define fun? But we have to do that. We have to define fun because in this context, what is fun? Is it jumping around? What is fun? And in this context, fun is the opposite of intimidation. So if you looked at the classroom, you look at the desks, all of that represents intimidation. And the opposite of that scenario is fun. And the biggest reason for fun is that learning is annoying. The first few days, even maybe the first few sessions, it's all very interesting. But the moment things start to get a little difficult, all hell seems to break loose. But why is this the case? It's because the teacher hasn't identified the intimidation factors. You know how this saga rolls out, don't you? You get on a course online, and then you start, okay, let's do this course, let's enjoy myself, and then you tend to give up. And people nudge you in the ribs and they go, you should make it a habit, you should persevere. But why did you give up in the first place? You already know the answer, don't you? If you were having fun, or if there was a nice little reward, a nice little carrot at the end of the activity, you would never need any incentive. You'd show up anyway, wouldn't you? Take, for instance, the Taking Action Forum in 5000 BC. That's the membership site. Clients join 5000 BC because they feel that loneliness of working alone. It's an online community, and there are many aspects to it, and one of these aspects is the Taking Action Forum. So you go in, you post what you're going to do, you get a buddy, and then off you go. Except most people don't do that. They start off and then they hit this pause button. And why do they hit that pause button? They hit it because something in their life shows up, some more work or some personal stuff. Something shows up and then they have to hit the pause button. At that point, you don't feel like reporting back on a Taking Action post is fun. But what if the reporting back was fun? Renuka and I often discuss a lot about how we can make things more fun, and we do this on our Friday coffee trips. Renuka is slightly famous for handwritten cards and sending New Zealand chocolate all around the world. We already send out, well, not me, she sends out over 500 bars a year. But she suggested that we create a little more fun, and here's how it went. If anyone posted a goal in the Taking Action forum, and then they followed it up for a week, yes, just a week, she'd send them chocolate. She told them this. She sent them an email, and then the Taking Action forum went slightly bananas. Was it fun to go in for a reward? Of course it was. Can you buy yourself a bar of chocolate from the corner store? Sure you can. That's no fun, is it? Instead, you get a bar of chocolate all the way from New Zealand. And this kind of fun, it applies to workshops as well. If you ask a client, why are you going to this workshop? You'll often hear the standard response. They'll say, I'm here to learn. I'm here to acquire a skill. And that's true, except for one minor point. If you announce that the workshop is going to start at 8 a.m. and then go till 8 p.m., then they all start to groan. Wait a second. What's wrong with this scenario? Wasn't that the agenda? Wasn't that the whole reason that clients were showing up for the workshop? But the moment you put them in a room where there is no escape, then they longingly look at the exit sign. Working, studying, learning, that's all intimidation. The exit sign represents fun. So how about building a workshop around the exit sign? Here's how you do it. You talk as little as possible, and then you send clients out to do assignments. And then you get them back in the room to take stock of their progress, and off they go again. At a psychotactics workshop, clients spend approximately 2/3 of their time outside the room. They operate differently in different countries as well. So in the Netherlands, for example, they weren't even in the building. They'd go for a walk for 30 minutes, and then they'd come back going, here, we finished our assignment. And, this fun isn't just built around the workshop itself, but before and during and maybe even after. So in the Brussels workshop, everyone jumped on a train, and we took a ride to the Tintin Museum, and then we had lunch, and then we came back, and then we had dinner. And if you look at Munich, it was about going to the Old Masters Museum. In Washington, D.C., we went to the Smithsonian. In Vancouver, we jumped in a boat. We went across to the island, and this is the island across from Vancouver City itself. Forgotten the name now. I think it's Granville Island, yeah. And we went to Granville Island, and we had a scavenger hunt. But what about the learning? What about the skill acquisition? Clients are pretty smart. They know why they're headed to a workshop. They know why they're going to 5000 BC and to that Taking Action forum. They know the real purpose. But why does the traditional system have to be so dull, so boring? Why does it have to be restricted to one after-event party or one pathetic meet and greet? Why can't it all be fun? For instance, you can teach Photoshop at a cafe just as easily as you can teach it in a boring environment with classroom and boring lights. And I'm saying boring a lot, but you get the point. And that's just the starting stage. That's just the starting point for a teacher to consider. Within each course, there's also sections which are intimidating. And if you look at it and you go, well, why are people struggling at this point in time? And you try and figure out why they're struggling. Well, the opposite of intimidation is fun. And people struggle at the same point or similar points almost every time you do a course or every time they read a book. They're kind of struggling at the same points. And you go, how can we make this fun? We think about it a lot at Psychotactics. In the headlines course, for instance, there is a whole week of getting headlines wrong. Yes, you heard correctly. You don't get points for getting it right. You get it wrong. In the info product course, there's a section where clients have a tough time wrapping their heads around the fact that you can take any 3 topics, just any 3 topics, you string them together, and you create an information product. So we give them an exercise. And the exercise is a whole lot of fun, and they cannot get it right. In fact, everyone gets it wrong, and it's a lot of fun. But the message goes home. And this exercise or the concept is intimidating because your brain can't work out how could you take three absolutely random things and put them together. It's not logical, and so it gets stuck. And what you have to do is you have to go and make it fun. And that's your job as a teacher. And this brings us to a very interesting point. What do you do next as a teacher? The first thing you need to do is to make the environment as interesting as possible. The second thing is to figure out which portions of the course are difficult. So then you isolate those parts and then you make them fun. And the third part is not to try and do this all yourself. Ask your clients which are the difficult parts. They will tell you the difficult parts. They will tell you why it's difficult. And you can even ask them, how would you make this fun? You'll be surprised at the answers that you get. This fun element is not restricted to live training situations. Do you make videos on YouTube? Well, so does Peter McKinnon. And what's the difference between him and thousands of other photographers on YouTube? Well, he's fun. In one episode, he shows the audience how to instantly wipe off the data of the SD card. So you get that SD card that you put into your DSLR, and he shows them how to instantly wipe it off. And then he goes around shaking the camera and he says, look, it came back. So say you're in a situation and someone says, you shouldn't have taken that photograph, wipe it out right away. So you go, okay, I'm wiping it off. And then he says, now shake the camera and you get all the data back. And at first the audience is gobsmacked. And then they realize McKinnon is having a go at them. And you look at the comments and you'll see none of that hatred. McKinnon is clearly having fun and he gets his audience to follow even while educating them. You have stories. You can have stories on podcasts. That's fun. You have cartoons and books. That's fun too. There are squillions of places you can bring fun to the table, but you don't always know which part is scary. So you have to ask your audience, or you have to see where they're struggling. If it's live, you can see it. If it's on a course, you can see it. But in a book, if you have little systems that enable them to email you, then that's what they'll do. And then you know how to fix it the next time around. This fun element also applies to your own learning, and this is like the second part. So just let's take a little breather here. And what we have figured out so far is that you as the teacher, you need to understand that everything is boring. After a point, everything is boring. It might not be boring for us who already know what to do in that field, but for other people, it's boring and intimidating. So the next question is, how do you make it fun? And how do you get your clients to point out that they have a problem? And then how do they suggest that you make it fun? And just going through this little exercise for little things makes a huge difference. And that's the end of the first part. But what about the second part? And the second part applies to your learning. And it's not a lot different, but let's approach that angle as well. All around you, you'll hear people giving you advice to turn off your distractions. Yes, we live in a very distracting world. And if distractions are getting in your way and you're not getting much done, then, well, turn it off. But by and large, we have a work day. And I have a work day and you have a work day. And I get a fair amount of work done. But every 30 minutes, you'll find me flat on the floor. Why on the floor? Because I'm laughing my head off. Every 30 minutes, I'm watching comedy on YouTube. I'll watch Danny Boy. I'll watch this BBC section called Live at the Apollo. And I'll watch other comedy series. From time to time, I'll head to Pinterest. This is not while I'm on the floor. This is back up on the chair. I'll check out what's popping in those screens. Twitter I avoid, but Facebook is another place where I will go and waste time. I don't want my day to look something out of St. Bernard's Monastery. I want to have fun. I took that fun to my language learning as well. I'll tell you, it's boring learning a language. You already know that, but I'll tell you anyway. And it's fun buying 24 courses and then using nothing, but you still can't learn a lot if you don't progress. So what I decided was I'm going to start putting a bunch of pictures into my language learning. And just in case you're wondering, why some people learn languages faster than others, it's often for this one reason. So there's this TED Talk and polyglot Lydia Markova. For some reason, my autocorrect called it a polygon. So this polygon, Lydia Markova, she learns languages and she loves learning languages so much that she's made a bit of a goal at this point in time to learn a new language almost every 2 years. However, learning languages is no picnic in the park, which is why she set about finding why others like her learn languages, or more precisely, what was their secret. And what did she find? She found that they all used different ways to learn a language. At first, there seemed to be no common thread in how people went about learning a language. However, there was one thing that they all agreed upon that sped up their learning. You know that one thing? It's called fun. They all put in fun elements. Now, I was super reluctant to learn Spanish until I discovered that in my software I could put in a whole bunch of pictures. And that's what makes it fun for me. For you, it might be audio, it might be some video. I don't know what it is that makes it fun for you. But if you want to make it interesting to learn something, then you have to reward yourself with either some audio or video or whatever, or some New Zealand chocolate. And that brings us to the finale of this podcast. So let's do a little summary, shall we? Learning is boring. If we like it or not, it's boring. And as a teacher, you have to do your due diligence, which in itself sounds boring. But you have to find the bits that clients struggle with. How can you fix that and make it fun? So if you're teaching someone Photoshop and you've got some fixing of a photo of a vase with flowers in it, I don't know, maybe something else is more interesting. How about picking up pictures or photographs that are more interesting and working on them instead of what the teacher gives you? Can you get your kids to skip while teaching to them? Why can't you have your clients submit their work as stick figures instead of, just words and stuff like that? Why can't they have it in captions? You know what fun looks like. Go ahead, remove that intimidation, and make it fun, both for yourself and for your clients. And that brings us to the end of this second part in this learning series, where the first part was about retention and how you need to train yourself to retain stuff, but also stuff that you need to forget, like a lot of stuff that you have to forget. So if you haven't listened to that first part, go and listen to it. And what's happening in Psychotactics land? Da Vinci, that's what's happening in Psychotactics land. One of the most fun courses that we have, and it's very hard to beat this one, is called the Da Vinci or the Cartooning course, which is spelled as DAVINCI. So if you want to be part of that course, and it's a splendid course conducted by Alison Beer, go to psychotactics.com/DAVINCI, and you have to be on that waiting list, but you can also have a look at what's there, and 6 months from now, you could be a cartoonist. I mean, you see the work that comes out of there. Sometimes I look at it and go, these people could always draw, couldn't they? But we know that is not true. And we know that's not true because we get them to draw at the beginning. And at the beginning, they're all struggling. And then 6 months later, they're turning out stuff where you think, have these people had this skill the whole time? But it's not true. We all learn skills, and that's what you learn in the cartooning course. What you learn is that things are holding you back. And one of the things that hold a lot of people back is this inability to draw. They think that you somehow have to be born with that skill, and you find out that's not true. So 22nd of June, that's when the booking opens. 5,000 BC members get first preference, so yep, if you're a 5,000 BC member, there's a better chance of you getting in that very small batch that we have every year. And then if you're on the waiting list, so make sure that you're either in 5,000 BC or on the waiting list. So that's 22nd of June. On the 7th of June, we have pre-sale, And if you know how quickly we sell our courses and stuff, that's the little secret that we have in pre-sale. It's not such a big secret. You learn how to do it. You learn how to do it effectively, and especially when you're starting out and you have a smaller audience, pre-sale becomes even more crucial. So pre-sale, 7th June, Da Vinci, 22nd June. Headline course is coming up when we get back from Greece. So we'll see you there. We'll be away. We'll be on holiday, and we'll see you in 5000 BC. Do you remember what's the uniqueness of this podcast? Yes, you do. All the other podcasts, or many of the other marketing podcasts, they make you jittery, like as if you're falling back. This one calms you down. If you need to tell someone about this podcast, and you do, I'm sure, then tell them this is the podcast that calms you down and doesn't make you feel like you're falling behind. That's me, Sean. This is saying bye for now. Bye-bye. Still listening? So this series is all about learning, right? And we go to this ramen place and they serve great ramen. No problem with that. But often we'll go and we'll have a beer. And what they'll do is they'll bring a beer and they'll bring a little, very tiny amount of snacks, just complimentary. And then they'll place that on the table. Now, if you're one person sitting on one table, you get one complimentary snack. But if there are 6 people who order 6 beers, you get one complimentary snack. And if there are 12 people that order 12 beers, you know what I'm talking about. Just one complimentary snack. And if you ask them, well, we're 12 of us. And they go, no, just one complimentary snack per table. So this is what we did. Renuka and I went out and we learned, right? This is whole learning exercise. So we learned from the last time. And so Renuka orders her beer and she gets one complimentary snack. And then, of course, we gobble that quickly enough. She doesn't finish her beer. She's finished the snack. And then I turn to the guy and I say, oh, can I have a beer? And you know where this is going, right? So he comes up to me and he goes, yeah. And he gets the beer. And then I say, and what about the snack? And he starts to say something. And I say, you mean she gets a snack and I don't get a snack? As if it's like discrimination or something. And you can see him rattled for one fraction of a second, maybe 2-3 seconds. And then he goes, I'll be back. He goes back. And now we have 2 complimentary snacks. And that's me, Sean D'Souza, saying bye for now. And I hope you're having a fun day, because we sure are. Bye-bye.